My husband died 5 years ago. At least, that's what everyone told me to believe. The day of his funeral still lives in my memory, like a frozen photograph. The gray sky above the cemetery, the cold wind brushing against my face, and the quiet whispers of people standing behind me while the priest spoke words I could barely hear. I remember staring at the coffin, and feeling like something inside me had been hollowed out. Daniel and I had been married for 8 years. He wasn't perfect. No one is. But he was the kind of man who always made coffee before I woke up and left little notes on the kitchen counter that said things like, "Drive safe," or "Don't forget to smile today." And then one day he was just gone. A sudden accident, they said. A truck. A wet road. No time to save him. Everything after that felt like a blur. After the funeral, his parents sat with me in my living room. His mother cried quietly while his father spoke in a low, heavy voice. "There's something you should know," he said. Daniel had apparently borrowed money shortly before his death. A large amount. Almost $12,000. According to them, it was meant to help cover medical bills for his uncle and some repairs for their old house. Daniel had always been private about money. I never questioned it. His father told me they were slowly paying off the debt but struggling. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, thinking about Daniel and the life we were supposed to have. In the morning, I made a decision. If Daniel had left behind a debt, then I would help pay it. It felt like the last thing I could do for him. So I started sending them money. $200 every month. At first, it didn't feel like much. I had a steady job working remotely for a marketing company in Seattle, and my expenses were small after Daniel was gone. Each month I transferred the money, and his mother would send a short message. "Thank you, dear. Daniel would be proud of you." Those words made the grief a little easier to carry. Months turned into years. The routine became part of my life. Every first day of the month I opened my banking app, sent $200, and closed it again without thinking. Sometimes his mother would call. She would talk about the house, the weather, or memories of Daniel when he was a child. I rarely visited them. They lived in a quiet suburb 3 hours away, and every time I thought about going, the memories felt too heavy. So I stayed in my small townhouse and focused on work. Life slowly rebuilt itself around the empty space Daniel left behind. 5 years passed that way. 5 quiet, predictable years. Until the afternoon everything cracked open. It was a Tuesday. I had just returned from the grocery store, and was carrying 2 bags toward my front door when I heard someone call my name. Emily. I turned around and saw Mrs. Carter, my next-door neighbor, standing on her porch. She was a woman in her late 60s who had lived in the neighborhood longer than anyone else. She had sharp eyes and a habit of noticing things most people ignored. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. Something in her voice made me stop. I set the grocery bags down on the porch and walked over. "What's wrong?" I asked. She hesitated for a moment, looking toward the street like she was making sure no one else was around. Then she leaned a little closer. "You need to stop sending money to your in-laws." For a second I thought I had misheard her. "What?" "The $200, she said quietly. "Every month." My stomach tightened. "How do you know about that?" Her eyes shifted toward the small security camera mounted above her garage. "I notice things," she replied. "And I saw something last week that doesn't make sense." I felt a strange chill crawl up my spine. "What are you talking about?" She folded her arms and looked directly at me. "I think you should check my security camera footage." I frowned. "Why?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped aside and gestured toward her front door. "Come inside," she said. "I'll show you." Something in her expression made my heart start beating faster. Inside her house, everything smelled faintly like lavender and old wood. She led me into her living room where a laptop sat on a small desk facing the window. The screen was already on. "This camera records the street 24 hours a day," she explained while sitting down. I stood beside her, confused and uneasy. "Mrs. Carter, what exactly am I looking for?" She clicked a few keys and rewound the footage to a date from the previous week. The screen showed the quiet street outside our houses. Cars passing. A delivery van. A dog walker. Normal things. Then she paused the video. "Watch carefully," she said. She pressed play again. A black sedan slowly pulled up across the street from my house. I leaned closer to the screen. "That's not unusual," I said. But Mrs. Carter didn't respond. The car door opened. A man stepped out. At first I only saw his back. He was tall, broad shoulders, dark jacket. Something about the way he moved made my chest tighten, though I couldn't explain why. The man walked a few steps toward the sidewalk. Then he turned slightly toward the camera. The moment his face became visible, my entire body went cold. My breath stopped. My mind refused to understand what my eyes were seeing, because the man standing on that street looked exactly like my husband, Daniel, 5 years after he was buried. Enjoying the story? Subscribe for more. For a long moment, I couldn't move. My mind kept trying to find another explanation. Someone who looked similar. A coincidence. A trick of the camera. But the more I stared at the screen, the more impossible it became to deny. The shape of his face. The way he held his shoulders. Even the small scar above his eyebrow that he got years ago while fixing our old garage door. It was him. My chest felt tight, like the air had suddenly disappeared from the room. "That's not possible," I whispered. Mrs. Carter didn't say anything. She simply let the video continue. On the screen, the man stood beside the car for a few seconds, looking toward my house. My house. Not the neighbors. Not the street. Directly at my front door. A strange chill crawled down my spine. What day was this? I asked, my voice shaking. "Last Thursday," Mrs. Carter replied. "Last Thursday." I tried to remember where I had been that day. Work meetings. A grocery run. A quiet evening at home. Nothing unusual. On the screen, the man walked a few steps toward my driveway. My heart began to pound harder. "He came closer?" I asked. Mrs. Carter nodded slowly. "He stood there for almost 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Watching my house." The man in the video reached into his pocket and pulled something out. A phone. He looked at it for a moment, typed something quickly, then slipped it back into his jacket. Then something even stranger happened. He looked directly at Mrs. Carter's camera. For just a second. But it was enough. The camera captured his face perfectly. Clear. Unmistakable. My legs suddenly felt weak. "That's Daniel," I said quietly. Mrs. Carter paused the video and turned to look at me. "I thought so too," she said. Silence filled the room. The ticking of a wall clock suddenly sounded louder than anything else. "But that can't be true," I said after a moment. "I was at his funeral. I saw the coffin." Mrs. Carter studied my face carefully. "Did you see him inside it?" Her question hit me harder than I expected. Did I? I tried to remember that day more clearly. The hospital had called early that morning. They told me Daniel didn't survive the accident. When I arrived, everything had already been arranged. The body had been prepared. The coffin had been closed for most of the viewing because of the injuries. That I suddenly realized something that made my stomach twist. I never actually saw his face. His parents had insisted the coffin remain closed. They said it would be better that way. At the time, I was too devastated to question anything. But now, a cold thought began forming in the back of my mind. Mrs. Carter clicked forward on the video again. "Watch what happens next," she said. The man, Daniel, walked back toward the car. But he didn't get in right away. Instead, another door opened. A second person stepped out. A woman. She was wearing dark sunglasses and a long coat. The camera angle didn't show her face clearly, but it was obvious they knew each other. They spoke for a moment beside the car. Then Daniel glanced once more toward my house. The look on his face made my chest tighten again. It wasn't the expression of a man returning home. It was the expression of someone watching from a distance. Someone hiding. Then both of them got into the car. The sedan slowly drove away. Mrs. Carter stopped the video. The room felt unbearably quiet. "You see why I told you to stop sending money?" she asked gently. I stared at the screen, my thoughts spinning. 5 years. For 5 years I had believed my husband was dead. For 5 years I had sent money to his parents to pay off a debt he supposedly left behind. And now there was video evidence that he might be alive. Maybe it's just someone who looks like him. I said, though the words sounded weak even to me. Mrs. Carter shook her head. I've lived next to you long enough to remember Daniel. She tapped the screen lightly. That's him. My mind started racing through possibilities. If Daniel was alive, then everything I had been told was a lie. The accident, the funeral, the debt, all of it. My hands began to tremble. Can you send me this video? I asked. Of course, she said. She plugged in a small USB drive and copied the footage while I stood there trying to steady my breathing. When she handed it to me, it felt strangely heavy in my palm, like it carried the weight of 5 years of lies. What are you going to do? She asked. I didn't answer right away. I walked to the window and looked out at the quiet street. Everything looked normal, peaceful, but suddenly nothing felt safe anymore. I'm going to find out the truth, I said finally. Mrs. Carter nodded slowly. That's what I hoped you'd say. I slipped the USB drive into my pocket and headed toward the door. But just before I stepped outside, she spoke again. Emily. I turned back. There's one more thing, she said. What? She hesitated for a moment. The car in the video. I checked the license plate. My heart skipped. And she looked directly into my eyes. It's registered to someone who lives only 20 minutes away. A strange mix of fear and determination rushed through me. Who? I asked. Mrs. Carter took a slow breath. A woman named Laura Mitchell. The name meant nothing to me. At least, not yet. But something told me my life was about to change in ways I never imagined. And the truth about Daniel was only just beginning to surface. Enjoying the story? Subscribe for more. For several seconds, I stood there in Mrs. Carter's living room without moving. The name she had just said kept repeating in my mind. Laura Mitchell. It didn't sound familiar, but something about it made my chest feel tight. Are you sure about the license plate? I asked. Mrs. Carter nodded firmly. I checked it twice. My nephew works in a local auto registration office. He confirmed it for me. 20 minutes away. That meant Daniel, or the man who looked exactly like him, had been living close to me this entire time. 5 years. 5 years of grief. 5 years of sending money. 5 years of believing my husband was buried in the ground. My hands slowly clenched into fists. I need the address, I said. Mrs. Carter hesitated. Emily, you should be careful. I will, I replied, though I wasn't sure that was true. She walked to her desk again, opened a small notebook, and wrote something down on a piece of paper. Then she handed it to me. I looked at the address. A small residential street in a nearby town. My heart started beating faster. Thank you, I said quietly. Mrs. Carter watched me carefully. If that man really is Daniel, then you deserve to know the truth. I nodded, though my thoughts were already racing ahead. I left her house and stepped back into the cool afternoon air. The street looked exactly the same as it had earlier. Quiet, peaceful. But inside me, everything felt different. I picked up my grocery bags from the porch, walked into my house, and closed the door behind me. For a moment, I leaned against it, trying to steady my breathing. Then I walked straight to the kitchen table and spread the items from the grocery store across the counter. Milk, bread, fruit, normal things, normal life. But nothing about my life felt normal anymore. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket and plugged it into my laptop. The video loaded quickly. There he was again, standing beside the black sedan. Daniel. Seeing his face again after 5 years felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart. I watched the footage 3 times. Each time, my certainty grew stronger. It was him. The same man I had married. The same man whose funeral I attended. The same man I had mourned for half a decade. But if he was alive, why would he let me believe he was dead? And why had his parents told me about a debt? Another thought suddenly struck me. The money. $200 every month. 5 years. That was $12,000. Exactly the amount his father said Daniel owed. A slow wave of anger began rising inside me. Had they lied to me? Had Daniel and his parents planned this together? The thought made my stomach twist. But I needed proof. Not guesses. Not theories. Proof. I checked the time. 4:20 p.m. If the address Mrs. Carter gave me was correct, I could drive there in less than half an hour. For a moment, doubt crept into my mind. What if I was wrong? What if I confronted strangers and embarrassed myself? But the image of Daniel standing beside that car burned in my memory. I grabbed my car keys. Within minutes, I was backing out of my driveway. The entire drive felt unreal. Traffic lights, passing cars, the radio playing softly. Everything felt distant, like I was watching my own life through a window. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What would I even say if I found him? Hello, Daniel. How was your fake death? Why did you let me cry over a coffin that might have been empty? My chest tightened again. The GPS guided me off the main highway and into a quiet suburban neighborhood. Tree-lined streets, small houses, children's bicycles on driveways. Normal life. Too normal. I slowed the car as I approached the address Mrs. Carter had written down. Then I saw it. A white house at the end of the street. And parked in the driveway was the black sedan from the video. My heart started pounding so hard it felt like it might break through my ribs. I parked my car half a block away and turned off the engine. For a moment, I just sat there staring at the house. The windows were closed. The curtains partially drawn. No movement. But the car was there, which meant someone was home. My palms felt damp. I stepped out of the car and walked slowly down the sidewalk. Each step felt heavier than the last. When I reached the house, I stood at the edge of the driveway. Up close, the sedan looked exactly the same as in the video. Same scratches on the bumper. Same license plate. My throat felt dry. I walked up the front path and stopped at the door. For a moment, my hand hovered above the doorbell. This was it. The moment when 5 years of lies might finally collapse. I pressed the bell. The sound echoed faintly inside the house. My heart raced as I waited. Footsteps approached from the other side of the door. Then the handle turned. The door slowly opened. A woman stood there. Tall. Early 30s. Dark hair tied back in a loose ponytail. Her eyes looked surprised to see me. Yes, she asked. For a second, I couldn't speak. Then I remembered the name Mrs. Carter had told me. Are you Laura Mitchell? I asked. Her expression changed slightly. Who's asking? I took a slow breath. My name is Emily. Silence filled the doorway. Then I said the words that made her face suddenly go pale. I'm Daniel's wife. Enjoying the story? Subscribe for more. For a moment, the world seemed to freeze between us. The woman standing in the doorway didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on mine, and I watched the color slowly drain from her face. What did you just say? She asked quietly. My name is Emily, I repeated. And I'm Daniel's wife. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the door. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she shook her head slowly, like she was trying to reject the words she had just heard. That's not possible, she said. My heart pounded harder. Why not? I asked. She opened her mouth to respond but stopped herself. Her eyes flicked quickly behind her, toward the inside of the house. That small movement didn't escape my attention. Someone else was inside. A strange tension filled the air between us. Finally she stepped outside, and gently pulled the door halfway closed behind her. Who told you to come here? She asked. No one, I said. I came because I saw Daniel. Her eyes widened again. You're mistaken, she replied quickly. I'm not. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the video Mrs. Carter had given me. Then I held the screen up so she could see it. The footage played. The black sedan. The man stepping out. Daniel's face clearly visible as he turned toward the camera. The moment Laura saw the screen, her shoulders stiffened. For a second, she didn't breathe. Then she looked back at me slowly. Where did you get that? She whispered. So it is him, I said. She didn't answer. Her silence was enough. My chest felt like it might explode with a mixture of anger, confusion, and disbelief. He died 5 years ago, I said. I buried him. Laura ran a hand through her hair nervously. You need to leave, she said quietly. No. Her eyes hardened slightly. You don't understand what you're doing. No. Y replica firmly. I think I finally do. My voice trembled as the words came out. For 5 years I believed my husband was dead. For 5 years I cried over him. For 5 years I sent money to his parents every single month because they told me he left a debt behind. Her eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite read. Shock? Maybe guilt. I deserve the truth, I said. Laura looked toward the street, then back at me. The neighborhood around us was quiet. A lawnmower hummed faintly somewhere down the block. Finally she sighed. You shouldn't have come here, she murmured. Then tell me why he's alive. She looked at the phone again where the video had paused on Daniel's face. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then something unexpected happened. The front door behind her opened. Laura turned quickly, and the man who stepped outside made my entire body go numb. Daniel. He looked exactly the same. Maybe a little older. Maybe a little more tired. But it was him. Standing just a few feet away from me. Alive. Real. My heart slammed painfully in my chest. For 5 years I had dreamed about seeing him again. But not like this. Not standing in another woman's doorway. Daniel froze when he saw me. The shock on his face was unmistakable. Emily, he whispered. Hearing my name in his voice after 5 years felt like someone had ripped open a wound that never fully healed. For several seconds none of us moved. Then the shock inside me turned into something else. Anger. Pure. Burning anger. You're alive, I said. My voice sounded colder than I expected. Daniel looked at Laura briefly, then back at me. Emily, don't, I snapped. The word came out sharper than I intended. You don't get to say my name like nothing happened. His shoulders dropped slightly. Please, he said quietly. Let me explain. I laughed bitterly. Explain what? Your funeral? The coffin? The 5 years I spent believing my husband was dead. Daniel ran a hand across the back of his neck, a nervous habit I remembered well. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, he said. My fists clenched again. That's funny, I replied. Because dying usually doesn't. Laura stepped forward slightly. Maybe we should talk inside, she suggested carefully. I shook my head. No. We're talking right here. Daniel looked around nervously, clearly aware that any neighbor could walk outside and see us. Emily, he said softly. Please. I crossed my arms. You have 1 minute to start making sense. He looked down at the ground for a moment. Then he took a slow breath. When the accident happened, I didn't die. My jaw tightened. That much is obvious. But something else happened, he continued. What? He hesitated. Laura glanced at him like she was silently urging him to stop. But he kept going. I was in serious trouble back then, Daniel said. What kind of trouble? I demanded. He lifted his eyes to meet mine. The kind that makes disappearing the only safe option. The words hung in the air between us that my mind struggled to process them. You faked your death, I said slowly. Daniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. The truth was written all over his face. You let me bury an empty coffin, I whispered. His expression filled with regret. I thought it would protect you. Something inside me snapped. Protect me? I repeated. Yes, he said. By letting me believe you were dead for 5 years? My voice was rising now. A car passed slowly down the street, the driver glancing curiously in our direction. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. There were people looking for me. What people? He hesitated again. Then he said the words that made my stomach twist. Dangerous ones. I stared at him. You're telling me you disappeared because someone wanted to hurt you? Yes. And somehow the solution was to lie to your wife. His face tightened. It was the only way to keep you safe. I shook my head slowly. No. My voice felt strangely calm now. You didn't disappear to protect me. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. Then why? He asked. I stepped closer until we were only a few feet apart. Because you were hiding something. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then Laura looked down at the ground. And that single movement told me everything I needed to know. Daniel hadn't just been hiding from danger. He had been hiding from me. Enjoying the story? Subscribe for more. For a few seconds the three of us stood there in silence. The quiet suburban street suddenly felt suffocating. Daniel looked at Laura, and Laura looked away from him. That tiny exchange told me more than any explanation he could give. So that's it, I said slowly. Daniel shook his head quickly. No, Emily, it's not what you think. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Really? Because it looks exactly like what I think. Laura shifted uncomfortably beside the door. Daniel took a step closer to me. You need to understand something, he said. Then explain it, I replied sharply. Because right now the only thing I understand is that my husband faked his death and disappeared for 5 years. Daniel rubbed his forehead like he was fighting a headache. It started before the accident, he said quietly. What started? He hesitated. My business. I frowned. You didn't have a business. I did, he replied. Just not one I talked about. My anger flared again. You're saying you had some secret life and never told your wife? Daniel sighed heavily. It wasn't supposed to become a problem. Laura crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe. You might as well tell her everything now, she said quietly. Daniel shot her a quick look, but didn't argue. He turned back to me. 5 years ago I invested in a company, he began. What company? A logistics company. I frowned. That sounds legal. It was at first. The way he said it made my stomach tighten. At first? I repeated. Daniel nodded slowly. The people I partnered with were moving shipments across state lines. Electronics, clothing, normal cargo. And eventually I realized they were moving other things too. My chest felt heavy. What kind of things? Daniel hesitated again. Things that attract the wrong kind of attention. Drugs. The word immediately formed in my mind. You were working with criminals, I said. His silence confirmed it. I stepped back slightly, suddenly feeling like I didn't recognize the man standing in front of me. You told me you worked in warehouse management, I said. I did. But you were actually working for a smuggling operation? Daniel looked down. I didn't know at the beginning. That's convenient. It's the truth, he insisted. Laura finally spoke again. He's not lying about that part, she said. I turned toward her sharply. And who exactly are you in this story? Her expression tightened. I met Daniel 2 years after he disappeared. My eyes narrowed. So you knew he was pretending to be dead? She didn't answer right away. That wasn't my secret to reveal, she said finally. The calmness in her voice made my anger rise again. You've been living with someone you knew had a wife who believed he was dead. Laura looked at Daniel again. He told me you were safe, she said. Safe. That word again. Daniel stepped forward quickly. Emily, listen. When I realized the people I worked with weren't just businessmen, I tried to leave. And they didn't like that. I folded my arms. So you staged your own death. It wasn't planned, he said. The accident gave you the opportunity, I replied. Daniel's face tightened. Yes. The honesty of that answer hit me like a punch. You used the accident to disappear. Yes. And your parents helped you. Daniel didn't answer immediately, but the guilt in his eyes said everything. My stomach twisted again. They lied to me, I said quietly. They thought it was the safest option, Daniel replied. For who? I demanded. For everyone. My laugh this time sounded hollow. Everyone except me. The anger that had been building inside me for the past hour was now turning into something colder, more focused. You let me grieve for you, I said. Daniel's voice softened. I never wanted to hurt you. Too late. Silence settled between us again. Then another thought suddenly hit me, the money. Daniel frowned slightly. What money? The $200 I've been sending your parents every month. His confusion looked genuine. What are you talking about? My eyes narrowed. Your father told me you left behind a $12,000 debt. Daniel stared at me. What? For 5 years I've been paying it off. Laura looked between us, clearly realizing something was wrong. Daniel's expression slowly changed from confusion to shock. I never asked them to do that, he said. I felt a chill run down my spine. So you didn't know? No. I studied his face carefully. He didn't look like he was lying, which meant something even worse might be true. Your parents had lied to you. The realization settled heavily in my chest. For 5 years I had been sending money to people who already knew their son was alive. And they never told me. They said you owed money from before the accident, I said quietly. Daniel ran both hands through his hair. That's not true. But the amount matches exactly, I replied. 12,000. Laura looked thoughtful. That's interesting, she murmured. Daniel glanced at her. What do you mean? She hesitated. That's the same amount someone offered for information about you back then. My heart skipped. What? I asked. Daniel's face went pale. Who offered it? Laura shook her head slowly. I never found out. I just heard rumors. The tension in the air thickened. For the first time since arriving at the house, Daniel looked genuinely frightened. You never told me that, he said. You didn't want to know, she replied quietly. A cold realization crept into my mind. Someone had been looking for Daniel 5 years ago. And somehow, the same amount of money kept appearing. 12,000 dollars. I looked at Daniel, then at Laura. A disturbing thought began forming. What if the debt story wasn't about paying something off? I said slowly. Both of them looked at me. Then what was it? Daniel asked. My voice dropped to a whisper. What if someone was paying to find you? The silence that followed felt heavier than anything else that had happened so far. Because suddenly, Daniel's fake death might not have been the end of the story. It might have been the beginning of something much darker. Enjoying the story? Subscribe for more. For a moment none of us spoke. The wind moved quietly through the trees along the street, and somewhere a dog barked in the distance. The neighborhood still looked peaceful, but suddenly it felt like the calm surface of something dangerous. Daniel stared at me like he was trying to process what I had just said. You think someone has been paying my parents to find me? He asked slowly. I don't know, I replied. But the numbers match. Laura's arms were still crossed as she leaned against the doorframe thinking. $12,000, she said quietly. That's not a random number. Daniel looked uneasy now. Who would pay that much just for information about me? He asked. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I looked directly into his eyes. The same people you said you were hiding from. The color slowly drained from Daniel's face. For the first time since I arrived, he looked truly scared. Laura straightened. If that's true, she said, then someone may have been looking for you this entire time. Daniel shook his head. No, that doesn't make sense. Why not? I asked. Because if they were still looking for me, they would have found me by now. Laura gave him a sharp look. Not if they were searching in the wrong place. The words hung in the air. I suddenly felt a chill crawl down my spine. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck again. My parents wouldn't do that, he said quietly. I didn't reply, but the doubt on my face was obvious. For 5 years they had known their son was alive. And for 5 years they had let me believe he was dead. That alone was enough to destroy any trust one had left. Maybe we should ask them, I said. Daniel looked up quickly. No. The firmness in his voice surprised me. Why not? Because if they really did something like that, he said, I don't want to involve them anymore. That's not how this works, I replied. You don't get to disappear for 5 years, and then decide which parts of the truth matter. Laura stepped between us slightly. Arguing here isn't going to solve anything, she said. Daniel took a slow breath. She's right. I looked at both of them. So what's your plan then? Daniel glanced toward the street like he was suddenly aware of how exposed we were standing outside. Come inside, he said quietly. I hesitated. 5 years ago I trusted this man with everything. Now I wasn't even sure I knew who he really was. But I also knew one thing for certain. I wasn't leaving without answers. After a moment I nodded. Fine. Laura opened the door fully and stepped aside. The house interior was simple but comfortable. A gray couch sat against the far wall, a small dining table near the kitchen, and large windows letting in the late afternoon light. Nothing about it looked like the hiding place of a man who had faked his death. Daniel closed the door behind us. The quiet inside felt heavier than the silence outside. I sat down slowly on the couch while Daniel remained standing near the window. Laura moved toward the kitchen and returned with 3 glasses of water. No one touched them. So, I said finally. Start from the beginning. Daniel leaned against the wall. The beginning of what? Your secret life. He sighed. I told you most of it already. No, I said calmly. You told me the short version. Laura pulled a chair closer and sat down across from me. You should probably tell her about the warehouse, she said. Daniel's eyes shifted toward her. That part isn't necessary. If someone is still looking for you, she replied, then everything is necessary. Daniel remained silent for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. 5 years ago the company I worked for had a warehouse near the port, he said. What kind of warehouse? I asked. Shipping containers. International cargo. That sounds big. It was. Daniel walked toward the table and rested his hands on the back of a chair. At first everything looked normal. Paperwork, shipments, contracts. And then? I asked. And then I started noticing things that didn't add up. Like what? Containers that weren't listed on the official manifests. Deliveries that only happen late at night. Drivers who refused to show identification. My stomach tightened again. So you figured out they were smuggling? Yes. And instead of going to the police? Daniel looked at me with tired eyes. You don't go to the police when the people you work for might already have connections inside the system. That answer made the room feel even colder. So what did you do? I asked. I tried to quit. Laura shook her head slightly. That didn't go well. Daniel gave her a brief look before continuing. They told me I could leave, he said. But they also told me I had already seen too much. The meaning behind those words was obvious. They threatened you. I said. Yes. What kind of threats? Daniel didn't answer right away. Finally he said quietly, the kind where people disappear. A chill moved through me again. So the accident gave you a way out? Yes. He looked at the floor. When the truck hit my car, I was taken to the hospital under another name. One of my contacts helped arrange it. Your parents? I asked. Daniel shook his head. No. Then who? Laura spoke before he could answer. Me. I turned to her, surprised. You helped him fake his death? She nodded slowly. I worked at the hospital back then. Daniel looked uncomfortable now. She helped me disappear, he said. Laura's voice was calm but serious. And I made sure no one asked too many questions. The realization settled in. Daniel hadn't just escaped his old life. He had help. Carefully planned help. But something still didn't make sense. You said the accident wasn't planned, I said. It wasn't. Then how did everything happen so perfectly? Neither of them answered immediately. The silence felt suspicious. Then a thought hit me that made my chest tighten. What if the accident wasn't random? I said slowly. Daniel looked up sharply. What do you mean? What if someone caused it? Laura's expression changed. You think someone tried to kill him? I didn't respond right away. Instead I looked at Daniel. You said those people didn't like that you tried to leave. Yes. And 2 days later you were in a near-fatal accident. Daniel's face slowly grew pale. Neither of us had said it before. But now the possibility was impossible to ignore. Maybe Daniel hadn't just escaped danger. Maybe he had survived an attempt to eliminate him. And if that was true, then the people who wanted him gone might never have stopped looking. Enjoying the story? Subscribe for more. The thought made my stomach churn. My hands began to tremble slightly as I tried to process everything. 5 years of lies, 5 years of grief, and now the possibility that Daniel's life had been in constant danger the entire time. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, pacing slowly across the small living room. His eyes darted toward the windows every few seconds, as if expecting someone to be watching us. They've been silent, he said quietly, almost to himself. I haven't seen or heard from them in years. But the minute I tried to leave, they found a way to remind me they were there. I stared at him, feeling the weight of every word. So your disappearance wasn't just about protecting me. It was also about keeping yourself alive. Daniel nodded slowly. Exactly. I never intended to hurt you, Emily. But I had no choice. I thought the only way to keep you safe was to make everyone believe I was dead. Laura shifted in her chair, her expression unreadable. You should have trusted someone else. You could have told me the truth sooner. Maybe we could have done something differently. Daniel's jaw tightened. I couldn't risk it. Not back then. Every move I made was calculated. Every choice was survival. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Then explain everything now. Tell me what really happened after the accident, every single detail. No more secrets. He hesitated, then sank into the chair across from me. His eyes were heavy with exhaustion. After the accident, I was taken to a safe location by Laura's contacts. I had fake identification, a new life, and a new name. They monitored me constantly. I couldn't leave their network without risking everything. I swallowed hard. So you were trapped. Trapped and alone for 5 years. Yes, he admitted. And during that time, I learned things I never wanted to know. Things about the people I was working with, the deals, the threats. I had to become invisible, Emily. The only way to survive was to disappear completely. I felt a wave of conflicting emotions, relief, anger, betrayal, and a strange flicker of pity. And my parents? Your parents? They knew you were alive the whole time. Daniel shook his head. No. My parents didn't know. They believed I was gone, just like everyone else. The only person who knew was Laura and a handful of trusted contacts. Laura leaned forward. I promised him I would protect him. That meant no one could know the truth. Even you. I felt my chest tighten again. Even me? The woman you supposedly loved? Daniel's eyes were pleading. I loved you, Emily. But love doesn't always save you from danger. I had to think strategically. Every message I sent, every move I made, had to ensure survival. You were safe because I vanished completely. I closed my eyes briefly, trying to calm the storm inside me. And the money. All the money I sent to your family. That was unnecessary. Daniel's eyes flickered. I had no idea about that. That wasn't part of the plan. My parents must have assumed you were helping them pay off the supposed debt. I never asked them to do that. The anger surged back into me. 5 years, Daniel. 5 years I sent money to people who already knew you were alive. He leaned forward, desperation in his voice. Emily, I'm so sorry. I never wanted it to happen like this. I thought hiding was the only way to keep you safe. I looked at Laura. And you. You helped him disappear. How many others know this secret? Laura hesitated. Just a few. It had to be that way. Too many people knowing could compromise everything. The people he worked for, they were dangerous. I felt the fear rise again. Dangerous enough to kill him? Daniel nodded slowly. Yes. And maybe more. That's why I stayed hidden. Every time I considered returning, I had to weigh the risks. My life, your safety, and the lives of others around me. I took a shaky breath. So every lie, every secret, every fake death, it was all survival. Yes, he said softly. Survival first. The rest was collateral damage. I stared at him, trying to reconcile the man I loved with the stranger before me. The husband I mourned for 5 years was alive, but the man in front of me carried burdens I could barely imagine. Laura finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. Emily, if you're going to find the truth, you need to understand one thing. The people who wanted him gone, they haven't forgotten. They could still be watching. I felt a chill run down my spine. Watching us now. Laura nodded. Maybe. That's why everything has to be handled carefully. One wrong move, and they could strike again. Daniel ran his hand across his face. I tried to vanish, but maybe my past is catching up. I thought I had 5 years to live in peace. But it seems someone has never let go. I felt a mixture of anger and fear. Then we have to uncover everything before it's too late. No more hiding. No more lies. Daniel looked at me, his expression weary but resolute. I agree. But Emily, once we start this, there's no going back. I met his gaze steadily. I don't care. I need the truth. No more secrets. Laura nodded slowly. Then we begin. But you have to understand. What comes next will change everything. I swallowed hard, the weight of her words pressing down on me. I'm ready. Daniel exhaled slowly. Good. Because the first thing you need to know is that my disappearance wasn't just about hiding from criminals. Someone orchestrated it. And that someone might still be very close. My heart skipped a beat. Close? You mean near me? Daniel's eyes were grim. Yes. Closer than you realize. The room went silent, the tension thick enough to feel physically. My mind raced. 5 years of lies. 5 years of grief. And now, the dangerous truth had finally caught up with us. I realized then that the next step would take courage, strategy, and more than a little luck. The man I loved was alive, but the world he had survived in was far from safe. And as I stared at Daniel and Laura, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be normal again. Enjoying the story? Subscribe for more. The quiet of the house pressed in around us. Even the usual suburban sounds, the distant lawnmowers, the occasional bark of a dog, felt muffled, as if the world outside knew something dark was unfolding inside these walls. Daniel ran a hand over his face, as if trying to erase the tension etched there. Emily, you need to understand. The people who wanted me gone, they're still powerful. They have eyes everywhere. And they're patient. Very patient. I swallowed hard. So all this time they've been waiting? Yes, he said quietly. Waiting for a chance. Waiting for me to slip up. Waiting for anyone connected to me to slip up. Laura leaned forward. And now that you're back, Emily, we have to be careful. One wrong move and they could strike again. We have to plan everything, every step, every move. It can't be rushed. I felt my chest tighten. The weight of 5 years of grief, anger, and confusion now collided with fear. I understand, I said, even though I wasn't entirely sure I did. Daniel looked at me, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. The first step is understanding why I disappeared in the first place. Why it had to be so extreme. I didn't just vanish to escape danger. I vanished because someone inside my circle betrayed me. I felt my heart skip. Betrayal? From who? That's what we need to find out, he replied. Someone I trusted completely. Someone who knew everything about my life, my contacts, my family, and used that to manipulate events that nearly ended me. Laura's voice cut in firm and measured. Emily, you need to listen carefully. This isn't just about Daniel being alive. It's about uncovering a network of people who will go to any length to protect their secrets. And that includes threats, intimidation, and possibly murder. I felt my stomach twist. For a moment, I thought of the years I had spent grieving, of the tears I had shed, the nights I had spent alone, the endless nights imagining a future that was stolen from me. All of it, every moment, had been under the shadow of lies and danger. Daniel's voice broke through my thoughts. When I realized the people I partnered with were dangerous, I tried to cut ties. But the deeper I got, the more I understood that walking away wasn't enough. Disappearing completely was the only way to survive. And even then, I wasn't sure I would make it. I stared at him, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what he had endured. You carried all of this alone? Yes, he said simply. Alone. And that's why Laura helped me. She became my anchor when I had nothing else. Laura looked down at her hands. It wasn't easy. Every decision was a risk. Every move could have been fatal. But we made it work. And we thought for a while, that was enough. I felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Relief that Daniel was alive. Anger at the deception. Fear of what might come next. And a strange, lingering curiosity. What exactly was the danger? And how close was it to me right now? I took a deep breath. Then tell me, who betrayed you? Who orchestrated the accident? Daniel hesitated. His jaw tightened. I don't know yet. But I have a lead. Someone within the company knew I was planning to leave, and they wanted to make sure I couldn't expose their operations. The accident. It was supposed to be the end. And somehow you survived, I said. Daniel nodded slowly. Yes. But that survival came at a cost. I had to vanish, change identities, rely on contacts I barely knew, and trust people I had never met before. Every day was a test. Every day, I feared they would find me. Laura added quietly. And now that Emily knows, we have to proceed carefully. She can't be drawn into danger blindly. Every step we take has to be calculated, precise, and secret. I looked at both of them, determination rising within me. I don't care about the danger. I need the truth. I've lost 5 years already, and I'm not losing any more. If you're telling me there's a network, someone watching, someone dangerous, I want to know everything. I need to see it all. Daniel's eyes softened. A mixture of relief and worry. You have no idea what that entails, Emily. What we're about to uncover could change everything about the life we thought we had. It won't be simple. It won't be safe. And it won't be short. I met his gaze firmly. I'm ready. No more lies. No more hiding. Laura finally nodded. Then the first step is to review all the people involved in the company, every contact, every transaction. We need to map out who had motives, who had access, and who had the means to stage the accident. Only then can we figure out who is still active, and who might be plotting even now. Daniel exhaled slowly. That's why I need to show you everything. The files, the records, the hidden communications. You need to understand the scale of what happened. I felt a wave of fear mixed with resolve. 5 years of my life had been stolen by lies, deception, and danger. But now, with Daniel alive and the truth in front of me, I knew one thing. I would not be a passive observer. I would confront every secret, every betrayal, every hidden truth. Laura glanced at the clock. We don't have much time. Once we start tracing these people, they'll notice. And if they notice, they'll act. That's why every move must be calculated. Every step precise. Daniel reached into a drawer and pulled out a thick folder, worn but meticulously organized. He placed it on the table in front of me. This contains everything I could gather before disappearing. The transactions, communications, names, dates. It's the beginning of understanding what we're really up against. I stared at the folder, feeling the weight of it. Every page, every document represented a piece of a puzzle that had been hidden from me for 5 years. And now, the pieces were finally in front of me. I took a deep breath and opened the folder. Inside were dozens of papers, printed emails, photographs, and handwritten notes. Names I didn't recognize, dates I didn't understand, codes and numbers that made my head spin. Laura leaned over my shoulder. Take your time. Absorb it. Every detail matters. One mistake, and it could be fatal. Daniel added quietly. And Emily, nothing here is ordinary. Every person, every action, every connection is tied to survival or death. This is bigger than any of us imagined. I nodded, my hands trembling slightly as I began to sort through the papers. The reality of what had happened, and what could still happen, hit me in full force. For the first time in 5 years, I felt the full weight of the truth pressing down on me. And I realized that my life, and Daniel's, would never be the same again. The investigation into the past had begun, and with it came the terrifying realization. Someone dangerous was still out there, watching, waiting, and we had only just started uncovering the secrets that could save us, or destroy us completely. Enjoying the story? Subscribe for more. The folder lay open in front of me, each page heavier than the last. Emails, transaction logs, photographs of men I didn't recognize, names scrawled in handwriting I couldn't match, all pointing toward a web of secrets far larger than I had imagined. My fingers trembled slightly as I traced a line of dates across one sheet, trying to make sense of the connections. Daniel watched me quietly, his face tight with worry. Don't rush it, he said. Every detail matters. One wrong assumption could put all of us in danger. I swallowed, my heart pounding. I don't care about danger right now. I need the truth. I need to know who's been manipulating everything, who's been lying, and why. Laura leaned closer, pointing at a printed email. See this? The payments, the instructions, the threats, all of them were routed through someone inside the company. Someone who knew Daniel was planning to leave. I traced the lines, feeling the patterns emerge slowly. So whoever planned the accident had access. Close access. Someone Daniel trusted. Daniel's jaw tightened. Yes. And they knew the exact moment to strike. That's why it was almost perfect. But the accident, it didn't kill me. And now, the fact that I survived means they might act again. A cold shiver ran through me. 5 years of grief, 5 years of lies, and now a threat that hadn't ended. I closed my eyes briefly, trying to steady my racing thoughts. Laura spoke quietly. We need to figure out who is still active. The people who set this up, they didn't disappear. They adapted. They've been watching, waiting. And now with Daniel back, they know someone is looking. Daniel exhaled slowly. That's why we need to be careful. We cannot trust anyone outside this circle. Every move we make must be calculated. And Emily, you need to understand, you're a target now too. I felt a surge of fear and anger. I don't care. I've already lost 5 years. I won't lose more waiting in the shadows while they hide. Laura nodded. Then the first step is mapping out everyone connected to the company at the time. Employees, contractors, delivery contacts, anyone with access to information or power over Daniel's movements. Once we have that, we start cross-referencing with suspicious activity. Daniel pulled out a small laptop and opened a secure folder. I kept digital copies of everything I could gather before disappearing. Emails, contracts, shipment logs. Everything is encrypted and hidden. No one can track this except us. I leaned over, scanning the screen. Each file, each folder, contained pieces of a puzzle that had shaped the last 5 years of our lives. The sheer scale of it was overwhelming, but I forced myself to focus. Laura pointed at one folder. Start here. These are the communications between Daniel's original partners and their suppliers. If anyone is still active, we'll see patterns. Dates, locations, payment records. Everything matters. I nodded, taking a deep breath. Okay, let's do it. We spent the next hour going through files, names, and transactions. Patterns began to emerge. Payments routed through offshore accounts, contacts who disappeared suddenly, shipments that were never logged officially. The deeper we dug, the clearer the picture became. Daniel paused suddenly, pointing at a line in a spreadsheet. Look at this. These payments, small but regular, were made right after the accident. Someone continued funding operations, or at least keeping the network alive. Laura frowned. That suggests whoever orchestrated the accident had backup plans. They weren't relying on Daniel being dead. They were playing a long game. I felt my stomach tighten. A long game, meaning they're still out there? Daniel's expression darkened. Yes. And now that we're uncovering the truth, they'll notice. They always notice. A knock at the door made all of us tense. I froze. Laura motioned for silence. Daniel crept toward the window, peering cautiously outside. Nothing. Just the quiet street. But the timing was too coincidental. Laura whispered, "We're being watched. They know someone is digging." My heart pounded. 5 years of lies and grief suddenly felt like a prelude to a new, more immediate danger. The network that had taken Daniel's life into hiding wasn't finished. Daniel leaned back, rubbing his face. We have to act fast. Identify the key players, find out who's active, and trace every communication. Every contact could be a threat, or an ally. And Emily, you cannot leave this house alone. Not until we know who we're dealing with. I swallowed hard, the weight of responsibility pressing down. But beneath the fear, a spark of determination ignited. I had mourned, I had cried, I had been deceived. Now I would confront the truth, no matter how dangerous. Hours passed as we cross-referenced names, accounts, and dates. The list of possible suspects grew shorter, but the stakes grew higher. Each revelation brought new questions. Each document uncovered secrets Daniel had hoped would remain hidden. Finally, I sat back, exhausted but focused. We have leads, I said. We know who had motive, who had access, and who could have orchestrated everything. Daniel nodded. Good. But the moment we make a move, they'll know we're onto them. We have to be prepared for retaliation. Laura looked at me with a serious expression. Emily, this isn't just about uncovering a secret anymore. This is about survival. Every step forward puts us closer to danger. I met her gaze firmly. I understand. But I'm not stopping. I need to know the truth. I need to see it all. And I need justice for the 5 years I lost. Daniel placed a hand on my shoulder. Then we moved together. Carefully, strategically, but together. and we'll uncover the entire network piece by piece. I nodded, my resolve hardening. The next phase had begun. The investigation, the confrontation, the reckoning. And I knew one thing for certain. By the end of this, nothing would be left hidden. Because the people who tried to control Daniel's life, and mine, would finally meet the consequences. And I would not stop until every secret, every lie, and every betrayal had been exposed. Enjoying the story? Subscribe for more. The room was quiet now. The tension from hours of digging through documents and digital files settling like a thick fog around us. Daniel closed the laptop gently, his eyes dark with thought. We have enough to start tracking them, he said. Enough to know who is still active, who is dangerous, and who can be trusted, if anyone. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past 5 years pressing down on me. Then let's do it. I've waited long enough. I've lost too much time. I'm not letting them continue controlling our lives. Laura leaned forward. We need to be smart. Every move has to be calculated. We can't just confront them blindly. They're dangerous, powerful, and patient. And now they know we're looking. Daniel nodded. Yes. But that knowledge works in our favor too. They're expecting us to panic, to hide, to make mistakes. But we won't. We'll be careful, precise, and we'll strike at the right moment. I felt a spark of determination rise inside me. 5 years of grief, deception, and fear had built me into someone who refused to be passive any longer. I would take control of my life, uncover every secret, and confront every lie. The first step was identifying the most dangerous players. The folder in front of me contained names, photographs, and communications that could expose the entire network. Daniel and Laura had helped me map it out, highlighting the ones with motive, access, and the means to orchestrate the accident that nearly killed him. Look here, Daniel said, pointing to a series of emails. These are the key operatives. They were all involved in maintaining the smuggling operation and monitoring my movements. They coordinated the accident and ensured no one would question my disappearance. I studied the emails carefully. Each line revealed a calculated plan, a web of lies and manipulation that spanned years. I could see now how Daniel had been trapped, and how cleverly everyone had orchestrated the illusion of his death. Laura added, and noticed the patterns. Even after he disappeared, payments and communications continued. That means some of them are still active. And now, with Daniel alive, they may act to protect their secrets. Daniel looked at me, his expression grave. We need to anticipate every move. They'll try to intimidate, threaten, or mislead us. But if we stay together, we can confront them strategically and safely. I nodded, feeling the resolve harden inside me. No more running. No more hiding. We face this head-on. For the next several hours, we worked tirelessly. Each lead, each document, each name was scrutinized. Connections were mapped, timelines reconstructed, and possible threats assessed. Slowly, a clearer picture emerged, one that showed who had orchestrated the accident, who had monitored Daniel, and who still posed a danger. Laura pointed to a name on the screen. This is the person who coordinated the accident. They had access to the company, the port, and the network. If we confront them first, it could disrupt the rest of the chain. Daniel exhaled slowly. Yes, but they won't go down easily. They're clever, patient, and ruthless. We have to be prepared for anything. I felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. For 5 years, I had mourned a man I thought was gone. For 5 years, I had been deceived and manipulated. And now, I had the chance to reclaim my life and uncover the truth. Laura added cautiously, Emily, you need to stay focused. This isn't just about discovering the truth, it's about survival. Every step we take is a risk. One wrong move, and they could strike. We have to plan meticulously. Daniel nodded. Yes, but we also have the element of surprise. They don't know we're actively investigating. If we act strategically, we can control the narrative and protect ourselves while exposing them. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility and the thrill of agency. For 5 years, I had been a passive player in a game controlled by lies, threats, and deception. Now, I had a role in uncovering the truth, in confronting the people who had manipulated my life, and in reclaiming control. We began drafting a plan. Identify the first target, gather evidence, and prepare for confrontation. Each step required careful timing, coordination, and secrecy. Every contact we traced, every document we analyzed, brought us closer to the core of the network and the truth about who had orchestrated Daniel's disappearance. Hours passed, and the room grew quieter. The late afternoon sun slipped into evening, casting long shadows across the floor. The tension was palpable, but so was determination. Finally, Daniel closed the folder and looked at me. "Emily, are you ready?" I met his gaze firmly. "I've waited 5 years for this moment. I'm ready. No more secrets. No more lies. No more waiting." Laura nodded. "Then it begins. Carefully, strategically, and together. And remember, once we start, there's no turning back." I took a deep breath, feeling the gravity of the situation. This was the moment where the past met the present, where deception would be confronted, and where the people who had manipulated our lives would finally face the consequences. Daniel placed his hand on mine. "We do this together. Every step, every decision, every risk. We uncover the truth, and we survive." I nodded, feeling a surge of strength. For 5 years, I had grieved, I had been deceived, and I had been manipulated. But now, I was alive, Daniel was alive, and together, we would uncover every secret, confront every betrayal, and reclaim our lives from the shadows that had controlled them for too long. The investigation had begun, and nothing, no threat, no secret, no lie, would stop us from uncovering the truth. This was the reckoning, the end of the deception, and the beginning of justice. Wow, what a story, right? 5 years of secrets, lies, and a truth that nobody saw coming. If this story gave you chills, make sure you hit that like button right now. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss a story like this. Trust me, we've got more unbelievable tales coming your way. Also, comment below and tell me what you would have done if you were in Emily's shoes. Would you have uncovered the truth, or stayed in the dark? I really want to hear your thoughts. And one last thing, share this video with a friend who loves suspense and thrill. Let's see what they think about Daniel's shocking secrets. Thank you for watching. And remember, the truth is always stranger than fiction.